Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the phrasal verb to split up. To split up. Now, this is when one thing, one complete thing, splits up into a number of smaller things. Okay, so for example, imagine that you're on a training course, okay, and the facilitator of that course says, okay, I have a team exercise, so I'm going to split you all up into two groups. Or he might say, I'm going to split you all up into twos or into threes. Oh, I used to hate that. You would go on a training course at work. Next thing you know, you have to work with someone that you don't like. And you're both looking at each other uneasily. And you end up doing all the work because you know that the other person won't or can't. I think we've all been in that situation, haven't we? Anyway, to split up. So you can split up people in a training course. You can split up food to serve it all on different plates. When people get divorced or separate, they split up. Now, some people just use the word split. I'm going to split you into teams, or my friends, they've split. It's also quite common. But split is more about something which is cracked and opening. For example, that piece of wood is split. Be careful when you lift it. Yeah. So, a split or two splits and to split up, they have kind of similar meanings. Let's just go through a few more examples. In a recipe, it might say, okay, split the bananas up into three separate parts, for example. It might just say split the bananas, but to split the food up, to split people up, people being split up into groups, these are the most common ways that you're going to hear the verb to split or to split up. Right, so for example, John and Sarah decided to split up. Due to differences, the founders agreed to split up their business. The team split up into smaller groups. After a big argument, Tom and Mike decided to split up. The company decided to split up its operations. In the divorce settlement, they agreed to split up their assets. The protesters split up into smaller groups. At the event, the guests split up into different rooms for activities. The charity decided to split up its funding. So there we are. Speaking of split up, do you remember I told you the other day that I was worried about my neighbors because I hadn't seen them? I knew somebody was there, but I was also aware that the car wasn't. So anyway, I was downtown yesterday when I was making that podcast for you in the shopping center. And while I was there, I saw the man, my neighbor. And he saw me, I saw him, and we started talking to each other. And I said to him, oh, are you okay? Because I was a bit worried. I noticed your car wasn't there. And he said, yeah, I don't live there anymore. I'm no longer your neighbor. And I said, oh, really? How's your wife? Is she okay? And he said, oh, we've separated. And I thought in my mind, that's really weird because he's 80 and his wife is 90 years old. And I thought if you've been married that long, presumably you've ironed out all your differences, to use the idiom, to iron out. You know, like if you're ironing clothes, you iron away all of the creases in your jumper or in your shirt. And he said, no, no, I just couldn't live with her anymore. I feel like a new man. Finally, I have my liberty. I've been given a second chance. And so I've moved in with my sister until I can find accommodation. And I was kind of shocked. I mean, when you reach age 80, presumably you must know that if you've been living with someone for 40 years, it's not worth throwing it all away. Anyway, he continued to tell me how unhappy he was, which I guess, was fine if he wanted to separate. That's up to him. But he said something very strange. He said, well, I will take my revenge. And I said, oh, really? He said, oh, yes, yes, because I have the car. And the next time she wants to go to a hospital appointment, she won't have the car. And that's my revenge. She'll have to take the bus. And I thought to myself, he really doesn't know a lot about revenge, does he? Because if I was in that situation and I wanted to take revenge, I would be demanding half the house. But anyway, that's his idea of revenge. Yeah, I guess revenge is different as you get older. But anyway, yeah, so they've separated. And I was really kind of like shocked. But then after I thought about it kind of makes sense because older people, particularly those who are having access to our welfare benefits here in the UK, they get many more benefits as single people than they would do as married people. So it probably works really well for them being older. Because he said, well, now that I've separated from my wife and they own this apartment, he said, I'm technically homeless. So the government will have to give me somewhere else to live. And as you know, here in the UK, because we used to be industrial, the government is like a major landlord here. In areas, especially in the north of the UK, the government own lots of property and they rent it out to all of us. We have towns and villages where the government owns most, if not all, of the property. So many of us rent our houses from the government. It sounds very socialist, doesn't it? And I suppose at one time it was. The government make a lot of income from this. Yeah. So anyway, he said, well, the government will have to find me a place to live, and they will. They'll be working hard to house him because he's older. He'll probably be given a place relatively quickly by the government. And then he said, yeah, and they'll have to give me benefits because my wife won't let me back home to get new clothes. So I'll have to buy myself things for my house. So you see, he'll get a lot of benefits from the government at this point. And she also will receive more benefits now because as soon as they get divorced, they're no longer liable to share funds. So it kind of works well. And that is something a lot of people here do. People who maybe don't want to work, they realize that if they separate and divorce as single people, they can get a lot more benefits. Now, I'm not sure how all of this works, and it sounds a little bit shady, doesn't it? but it's what people here do in order to get around the system. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I am aware that it creates another place in our welfare system where you can access benefits. It sounds crazy, but that's the way it is. And for those people who are experts on this, they will know exactly how to work the system to get what they want. So the cost of living alone is greater for the government, and the amount of benefits you would receive if you're not working are higher because you're not living in a shared house with your wife or partner or whoever. So anyway, they told me, or the man told me, that he's separated. So as usual here in the UK, the responsibility for fixing his life lies with the government. Maybe as a old man, that's fine, but it's probably unthinkable where you are that the government would have to give you accommodation. The government would have to give you money to look after yourself. It's a different world, and I wanted to remind him of how lucky he is, because in other parts of the world, you don't get anything from the government, you know. But of course, he's a very old man. I didn't want to offend him or upset him. Anyway, moving on, another quick story from the UK before we finish, and that is the fact that Emma Watson, the woman from Harry Potter, she parked her car illegally in front of a car park entrance a few days ago in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is where Shakespeare comes from. Now, she parked there for 3 or 4 hours, and many people were very upset because they couldn't get in or out of this car park. And finally, the people who couldn't get out of the car park, they went into the pub next door and they asked who owns the Audi, or her Audi is an A3 series. I don't know what that is, okay? Who owns the Audi? It's worth £33,000, okay? I just thought I'd mention that. Who owns the Audi? And of course, no one replied. So they started to say in a loud voice, the person who owns the blue Audi, can they please move it? And nobody replied. I mean, I'm guessing the pub must have been huge anyway. And finally, they called the police, and the police came and removed it. And apparently, at 11 p.m., Emma Watson realized her car was being removed, and she came rushing out of the pub. When someone rushes to do something, we often say flying. Nothing to do with Harry Potter, okay? So she came flying out the pub, and she shouted at the police, please, please, that's my car. Please stop. I mean, I don't know if she was drunk or what was happening there, but the police ignored her and took her car away, and she was very, very upset. And the local government said, yes, indeed, her car was taken away, and they have given her a penalty of £70. And the newspaper is saying, well, that's not going to dent her fortune. That just means bump. To dent, you know, you can dent a car, bump a car. So they're saying in the newspaper that's not going to affect her. It's only £70, and she's worth, is it 30 million, 60 million, something like this? And the paper is saying that she's done a bad thing, you know? So she was very upset to see her car disappearing into the distance. And there we are. So that's news from the UK about Emma Watson's car. I mean, I didn't think someone like her would be out drinking in a local bar. I would have thought that she would have her own bar to go to if she's worth 60 million. But I don't know. Maybe people who are so rich, maybe they just do their own thing. I don't know. But very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. You don't expect Emma Watson to be blocking a car park, so her Audi was taken away. That's it from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. Let's talk again soon. See you all. Bye.